Thanks, everyone. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invite because what you do is important. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of VA benefits, I want to kind of talk about why what you do is important. You know, we have about 340,000 veterans in the state, and about 100,000, a little over, have VA benefits. So 240,000 veterans in this state don't have any kind of VA benefit. Matter of fact, we don't even know where they are. They came home, they dispersed after they ETS'd or got out of the Guard, and that's the last we heard of them. They went back to their jobs, went to college, got married, did whatever. I'll tell you a story. I was in Bend, and I was talking to a hospice, telling them about end-of-life veteran issues. And the man who was the manager of this entire hospice was a helicopter pilot during Vietnam. And someone whispered that in my ear, and he hadn't really told anybody he was a veteran. And I spun around, I turned to him, I said, "You got your benefits?" No, never thought I needed them. Turns out, I talked to his wife afterwards, and sure enough, this fellow had some issues with post-traumatic stress and his combat experiences. But he wasn't willing to use that welfare. Didn't want that stuff. Well, we know in this room that veteran benefits is not welfare. When you rose your right hand and said, "I swear to defend my country against all enemies, foreign and domestic," at that moment, you earned those veteran benefits through your service. We have a big job. At the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, we can only do so much. I like to joke with people that if you think government's the answer, I want to know what the question is. Because we can only do so much. We need the community. We need veterans. We need veterans helping veterans to reach out to those 240,000 veterans that didn't get their benefits, came home from Vietnam, for example, and had a hard time and said, "I'm never doing this again," don't want their benefits but are due, or simply don't even know what the benefits are. We can't do that at ODVA by ourselves. This group, what you do, matters. Let me tell you why it matters. Today, I had a phone call from my director. A state legislator had called him and said, "We have a suicidal veteran, OIF, 2-tour. Tom, find him." We found him, got him in, got him help, got him squared away. That's one of how many out there that I just happened to hear about. You folks are going to hear about it in your communities much sooner than I'm going to hear about it. And you need to stand up and charge and take care of those things. In our culture, in our warrior culture, we don't leave anybody behind. We need to have that same culture in our veteran culture. Not one veteran gets left behind. Everybody gets the benefits they earn through their service. At least they get the opportunity to know what they are and make a decision whether they want to have them or not. And that's where you folks come in. You may think you're in the veteran benefit business, but you're not. You're in the people business. Your job is to change lives. If people ask me what I do for a living, I change lives. I do it one veteran at a time. My hope for you through today, what we're going to tell you, is the information we provide will help you change lives. Will help you take somebody from homelessness to getting them a benefit that gets them into self-sufficiency. My hope is you take somebody who's got a disability that they've had for 40, 60 years, and you move them through the system where they get health care and their disability benefits. My hope is that somebody who really needs health care and had no idea that the VA could help them, you walk them through that process and you get them the help they need. And there's more benefits you're going to help with because there's lives to change out there. So I just honor you guys because you don't have to do this. Not one of you in the room has to do this. You're not getting paid to do this. This isn't your job. You do this because you have a heart for it. And it matters. So know that we at the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs honor you folks for your continued service. You served your country, and now you're serving your brothers and sisters. And don't leave anybody behind. With that, let's get to business. I brought a book with me. You'll be tested on after the game here. This is the book of Federal Veteran Laws, Rules, and Regulations. This is the United States Code, Chapter 38, and the Code of Federal Regulations, Chapter 38. These are the laws by which VA works. People think that veterans benefits is a benefit system like Social Security or any other of the federal benefits. It's not. The VA is a legal system. It's a legal system. When you file a claim on behalf of a veteran, what you're actually doing is telling the United States government we have a claim against you for something the United States government owes a veteran. Every answer is in this book. And this is why some veterans, when they apply for a benefit, are turned down because they didn't meet the criteria of the book. Now, how many of you in the room have ever applied for a veteran benefit? How many have ever had it not go right? It took years and years to years, and some of you are probably still working on it. Okay? And it's all because the people looking at the claim or looking at the benefit are saying, no, you're not quite meeting the criteria of the book. And it frustrates us because we know that we earn this benefit. And there should be no red tape in the middle of getting to it. And you're going to hear veterans come to you, Matter and Hornet, that these guys are turning me down again. Isn't it so simple for them to figure out? Well, if they thought like we did, sure. But that's not the rules they play under. I would tell you that everybody that works at the federal VA would give you your benefits in a heartbeat if it were up to them just to make that subjective decision. But it's not. It's up to this book. And what I'm going to teach you today is what this book says. I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version of it, okay? And walk you through it. I'm also going to give you materials on how to find things in this book so you can look it up yourselves. I'm also going to give you some other resources that are going to help you kind of, when you're in the field, how to do some stuff out there. How many have heard of disability compensation? Everyone get disability compensation. Here's the rules. Here's the Reader's Digest rule. If the military breaks it, it buys it. Okay? That's what I tell folks. The military breaks it, it buys it. If, while you were on active duty, something happened to you, emotionally, physically, mentally, and years later you're still struggling with that issue, and there's a nexus between it happening here and your problem here, and you can kind of show through evidence that this event in military is causing this event you're having here, you apply for a service-connected disability. Okay? That sounds pretty simple, isn't it? Not at all. And let me tell you why. Those who served in Vietnam, when you got hurt in the field and you went to a field hospital or you saw your medic, how much of that was documented and how much of that documentation made it home? Not much. So you come in and tell me, yeah, I was wherever you were, and I did X, and hurt my knee, and I'm having problems with it. I've had problems with it ever since. And I went to the field hospital, and we go to get those records, and they don't exist. How do I prove it happened? Is your word good enough for the VA? No. Because, again, it's a legal system. And in a legal system, what do we need? Evidence. It's as if you're going to court. If you go to court without evidence, guess what's going to happen? You're going to lose. You're going to lose. So part of our job, when we first get somebody, and we're going to talk about disability compensation, which is one of the benefits, our first question to them is this: where did you serve and what did you do? Where did you serve and what did you do? The reason we ask that is because the answers to that tell us a whole bunch about their service. So if you ask me, Tom, where did you serve, what did you do? And I said, I was at the Defense Language Institute learning Russian. So you're saying, oh, you're a peacetime Cold War vet. Okay, it tells me a little bit about your service. The second question is, do you ever go to sick call? You ever go somewhere get taken care of? Why do I ask that? Because there should be medical evidence somewhere as to why you were in sick call. And what that tells me is, aha, maybe there's some evidence where I can connect what they're going to tell me next. So instead of saying, tell me your story, what's going on with you? If I did that, you would spend the next 35 minutes telling me how mad you are at the VA for the past 20 years. And when you were done, what did I know about your claim? I've got no evidence. I don't know where he served and what he did. I don't have any of the basic information, the who, what, where, why, and when information I need to actually work the claim, but I've heard a great story. Now, I love the stories. We get to the stories because the stories are great. Helps us fill in the holes. But I ask, where were you? What'd you do? Did you ever go to sick call? Whatever happened to you? Oh yeah, I went. Well, okay, great. So then we get into what's going on with you physically. Sometimes, if it's a post-traumatic stress case, guys will say, well, I've got some hearing loss and some ringing in my ears, or I've got a bad knee or a bad back. They're not going to tell you about the post-traumatic stress stuff, are they? But if you tell me where you were and what you did, and I'm looking at your DD-214, your discharge, or if I'm looking at a separation document for a World War II person, what's that going to tell me? It's going to tell me what unit they served with, where they were, at least in part. It's going to tell me what commendations and medals they earned. And that medal piece is very important. I had a World War II veteran came to me. He wanted hearing aids because he was old and couldn't hear anymore. His wife drug him in and says, he can't hear me anymore. He needs hearing aids. I said, do you have a separation document? Sure. And it read D-Day, Battle of the Bulge, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and he marches all the way into Germany. And he wants hearing aids. And for 65 years, he should have been getting other benefits that he forewent because he said, oh, that was welfare. I didn't want that. I get veterans come in, World War II veterans, that do the same thing. Well, hearing aids. Everyone wants hearing aids. This was Navy vet. And I said, give me your paperwork. And I'm looking through it. And this guy didn't have just one boat, but 2 boats shot out from under him during World War II in the Pacific and was in the water for a total of 17 days. And I asked his wife, I said, do you ever have any symptoms of anger or irritation? Well, I haven't slept with a guy since 1949. He's thrashing around. Well, of course he's thrashing around. He's having these issues, right? So we have to go and be very, very good questioners. We have to do interviews. It's not about you telling me your war story, because that's not an interview, because I'm not gathering the information I need. All I'm doing is spinning you up because you're going to tell me a story that's going to upset you. That doesn't help us. So if I'm going to do a claim for disability compensation, I need to, 1, find out what happened in service. I need to, 2, find out what's going on today with that injury. I need to, 3, determine if there's a nexus, meaning that this and this are connected. And there's a third leg of the stool that the VA wants to prove. Where's the continuity between service and today? Where's the continuity? You'll see that word. Sometimes they'll deny you and say, well, certainly the veteran had the accident, and certainly the veteran's knee's hurting today, 40 years later, but he didn't go to the doctor between 1965 and 2012. There's no continuity. And we have to address that because that's a legal argument. It's an argument when you read it in the paper will really tick you off. Well, of course I didn't go to the doctor. They couldn't do anything for me anyway. Blah, blah, blah. They don't care. It's a legal argument, folks. It's not how you feel about it. We train our veteran service officers, never write on a claim, the veteran feels. Because when you say the veteran feels, the VA will say, we don't care how the veteran feels. It's not about how the veteran feels. Show me the evidence. We want to grant the claim. We want to help you, but you have to give us what we need to do it. So in the interview process for a disability claim, where were you? What'd you do? Where'd you serve? Vietnam. So right away, I know some things about you. Some questions I'm going to ask, because there are 5 ways to service connect somebody for a disability compensation. Do you know that? There are five ways? Now the first one, you know, direct. I fell off the truck and broke my back, and now my back hurts. Direct service connection. I was in the jungle, and they shot me, and I'm service connected, right? Direct. Secondary, something called secondary conditions. You served in Vietnam, you have type 2 diabetes, but guess what? When you have type 2 diabetes, you also get some other things. You can have neuropathy, which is burning of the hands and feet, kind of a tingling when your hands fall asleep. You can have erectile dysfunction, you can have blood pressure problems, you can have retinopathy, you can have kidney issues, you have blood pressure issues. There's secondary conditions. And if you have a secondary condition that's related to the initial condition, that's service connectable. The third way, what we call presumptive. In the law, and we'll just pick on Agent Orange because we like it, Chapter 1113 of the USC, you don't have to remember that. There's a list of things that says if you were in Vietnam, it's presumed if you were boots on the ground, you were exposed to Agent Orange. Period. You know, in the old days, probably like in the 70s, 80s, when you guys were looking at this, they had those little maps of where Agent Orange was. They got rid of that. They said Agent Orange was everywhere. Except for the poor guys on the boats out in the blue water. They don't get it. But if you were boots on the ground or you were a brown water Navy guy, the presumption is you were exposed. And here's the deal. Let's say you took one step on the tarmac in Saigon from the plane to transfer planes to go to Thailand. You were boots on the ground in Vietnam. You were exposed. The presumptive then is if you get prostate cancer, lung cancer, type 2 diabetes, various larynx cancer, various cancers. They just added ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease, right? Ischemic heart disease, heart issues. It is presumed that it was caused by Agent Orange. So if I'm in an interview situation for somebody with disability compensation, and I say, what'd you do, where'd you serve? And you say, Vietnam. I'm saying, yeah, what'd you do there? And you're going to tell me, you know, I drank a lot of beer. And I'm going to immediately start asking you, have you had any problems with prostate cancer or type 2 diabetes? Have you ever been diagnosed? I'm going to go through that presumptive list. Because that's the low-hanging fruit, isn't it? That's the easy ones. You got to find out first if he's service-connected on presumptive. So we have the direct connection, meaning you got hurt, there's records, we prove it. There's the secondary, something's going on, and secondary. I'll give you a great example. People will have a bad hip, and they walk funny. And eventually the knee wears out because you're walking funny, right? Well, the knee becomes secondary to the hip because the knee injury wasn't caused by the service, but it sure is caused by the disability. Secondary condition. We have the presumptive conditions. Now, there are presumptives for Agent Orange. There are presumptives for atomic vets. If you were one of the atomic veterans, Bikini Island, all the rest, they have presumptives. If you're a prisoner of war, there are presumptives that you get. Okay. So we look at those. A fourth way. Anybody know what this one is? Ever heard of what they call 1151? 1151. The reason they call it 1151 is in this book, it's the chapter 1151. If you are in the VA system and a VA doctor does something that amounts to malpractice, you are allowed to file a claim for service connection under 1151 saying that the doctor hurt you or the VA system hurt you. I'm living proof of an 1151 claim. I came out of the service with 2 bad knees and a bad shoulder. Arthritis set in and spread everywhere. Great, I'm taking medication for 10 years. 10 years taking this medication. The medication, if you read all the fine print, says if you take this for a long time, you're going to get a bleeding ulcer. So I started having the symptoms of bleeding ulcers, but the VA kind of ignored that. And they told me, they sent me to physical therapy and said that I was holding my neck wrong. Okay, so I started walking better. Well, I end up with a GI bleed. And not just a bleed, but an artery burst and nearly burst my pancreas. So I end up in emergency surgery. They take half my stomach out and do this really bad job on me. This was a private hospital. And I live. I was in the hospital 9 days with no food. I lost 35 pounds. And I got out and I went, I should probably file a claim for this. Because this is caused by this medication. All my doctors said it was. All these private doctors. And I filed an 1151 claim and said the medication you were giving me caused this problem. And my claim went through in 32 days. Now, there was reasons for that.
That's a record.
Yeah, there was reasons for that. One, they knew they knew. The record was clear because I had been complaining about these symptoms for a long time. But two, I was running a ballot campaign. I used to be in politics, and I was a very public figure at the time, and I was doing a ballot campaign on healthcare. And the last thing they wanted me to do was go on TV and talk about my personal experience with healthcare. And so it all worked out. 1151 claim. VA, if they hurt you. But 1151 has a secondary part of it. So when you read the statute, it talks about if VA hurts you. However, 1151 is also if you're a voc rehabilitation person, so meaning you're service-connected disabled, and the VA sends you back to school, or they send you through a vocational rehabilitation program. Your health care is covered under 1151 if you get hurt on the job. So let's say I'm going to learn to be a welder, and I'm a service-connected disabled vet, and I'm going to go through vocational rehabilitation and be a welder. And I'm welding, and I slip, and I burn the heck out of my hand. I do a Victor. That is an 1151 covered claim over their voc rehab. So it's not malpractice. It's just a secondary part of that statute. So I've said 4, right? We've said direct, secondary, presumptive, 1151. And what's the 5th? Anybody know? Jack Daniels is the 5th. Good job. Good job. Give this man something for that. I like it. It's good. Actually, I got to remember now. So we got direct, we got secondary, we got presumptive, we've got 1151, and we have, it's always the 5th one I'm always struggling with too. I had it when I was driving. I'll remember it here in a second. There's a 5th one we'll talk about in a minute. But as you can see, when you're going to do a service-connected claim, you've got a lot of questions to ask. It's not, tell me your war story. It's not, let's spin you up the best I can and see what happens. It's not throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks. It's a legal process, and we're going to ask you a bunch of questions. And we're going to find out what happened in service. We're going to find out if it's a directly related or not. We're going to find out if it's a presumptive or not. We're going to find out if you have secondary conditions, especially with certain things that are very clear, such as, like I said, type 2 diabetes and the Agent Orange stuff. We are going to figure out if any angle we can to get you your connection. Okay. Remember this though. Has to happen in active duty. I want to dispel anything like this. Doesn't have to be combat. You can be drinking and fall off the curb. If you're on Title 10 active duty orders and you crack your skull when you were drinking, that's service connected because you were in active duty. Okay. A lot of people don't file for claims because they say, "Well, I wasn't in combat." Doesn't matter. Well, you know, my knees. What happened was I tore the cartilage up and my right kneecap cracked in half. You know how it happened? I was playing basketball for my company. My shoulder, there was this big Air Force guy, and I slid over to block him, and I got the ball right here, and he was so strong, he took the ball over my shoulder and pulled my arm out of the socket. And at 22, I just said, "Put it back," and he put it back. And I went on, but it never healed right. So was that no? It wasn't. Well, it's kind of combat, but it was not something that was even related to my duties. But it's service connected because I was on duty when it happened. I was on duty when it happened. So disabuse of anybody who says, "Well, I wasn't in combat, so I can't really, be service connected." Certainly you can. If something happened to you on duty. So a lot of what we deal with, honestly, is orthopedic issues. Ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, elbows, necks, backs, skeletal muscle issues. Because in the military, those are the things that get wore out, right? When you're doing your PT, the knees go from the running with the ruck and all that kind of stuff. If you're a combat guy, lots of falling down and getting back up, falling down and getting back up, all that. Helicopter guys, it's C-spine. You know why? They got this 15-pound helmet with night vision on it, and they're always doing this. And it just grinds the cartilage and things in their neck. And you'll hear them pop in their neck all the time after service. But they have to pass flight physicals, so they never tell anybody. But after service, their necks are all messed up. The guys coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, low back because of the battle rattle they're wearing. And think about it for a second. You've got a front plate and a back plate, and you've got all this gear, and you're the guy in the Humvee that's standing up in the 50, and you're bouncing around the roads of Afghanistan every day. Your head's going like this, your back's going like this. You get done, and you're tore up. So muscular skeletal are the questions we ask first. Where were you? What'd you do? Ever go to sick call? Having any problems with any kind of muscle issues or skeletal issues? Bones hurt? Joints hurt? Any of that kind of stuff? Because that's the first thing people go, "Well, you know what? Now that you mention it, my knee pops every time, or it locks, or it breaks." Aha! We've got something. Something's wrong with you related to your service. Once we get past asking the questions about muscular skeletal, where do you think we go next? The head. Okay? How you doing? Now, I don't just ask people, "Do you have PTSD? Have you felt like killing someone lately?" No. What we do is, there's a symptomology for post-traumatic stress. Okay? There's actually charts that say under the DSM-4, anybody ever heard of DSM-4? It's the psychological rating system and symptomology system for all sorts of emotional mental issues. So for PTSD, we know there's irritation and anger and hypervigilance and sleep disturbances and self-medicating, and there's a list, a long list. And I start talking to folks about, are you having problems sleeping? Because all of them do. Are you having problems with kind of intrusive thoughts, kind of things just popping into your head you can't control? How are your relationships? How are you doing at work? How many problems with irritation, getting angry? Are you okay in crowds? Right? Do you feel like you got to check your doors all the time? Hypervigilance. I walk them through it. Are you having any of these kind of things? And then what I do is I give them this piece of paper that has a knight in armor on it and has all the symptoms. And I give them a highlighter and said, why don't you highlight for me all the things you're feeling right now? And this comes from the Military Order of the Purple Heart. They have a book on for families on how to deal with post-traumatic stress. And usually I get at least half or more. Most of the time, though, they've been misdiagnosed by some private physician who doesn't understand military, and they've been diagnosed with depression or anxiety or panic attacks. And they're being treated for those things, but it's not working because that's not what they have. Anxiety and panic may be a symptomology of PTSD, but it's not the condition. The PTSD is the condition, has to be treated differently. So once I get done musculoskeletal questions, I start asking about these other issues. Depression. Now, females. They may be exhibiting symptoms of post-traumatic stress when you meet them, right? Not feeling very comfortable, kind of looking for the door. People shift their hips so they can get away fast, keeping distance. Understand that a lot of females, especially, and there's males too, but a lot of females are experiencing military sexual trauma, which is another type of PTSD, but it exhibits a little bit differently than combat PTSD. If you see a woman who's dressing very loose clothes, not form-fitting, very, very kind of square, not showing herself off, hats, and really trying to cover herself up, that's kind of a sign. Okay, they're veterans, but their experience was really horrible, and they don't trust. One of their issues is trust issues. So as you're going through this, do you have any issues, musculoskeletal, knees, backs, hips, blah, blah, blah? No, I'm fine. Any digestive kind of things? No, I'm good. How about you have problems, readjusting? Are you having problems like getting along with people, anything like that? There'll be silence. When you hit the landmine, the conversation will stop, and that's where you know. And that's when you are a compassionate person and you say, let's go into this slow. I got a feeling there's something that we need to kind of talk about. And then you ask this as a man, would you be more comfortable talking to a woman about this? Every one of my VSOs, male and female, we do this. Would you be more comfortable talking to a female or a male counselor? And they'll say yes or no. If you've got someone and you've got the red flag that goes up and you think, I think there's something here. You want to talk to one of our female veterans? Would that be better? Yeah, great. Hook them up. Hook them up with us because we got a lot of female counselors that can help out. Okay, so yeah, you're right. You go to the head. Now in the head, it's not just PTSD. In their military sick call, when you go to sick call, do you ever go for any kind of a mental health exam? They get you for depression or anxiety or anything. You have shell shock, combat fatigue, any of those kind of things. You can ask those questions because that's going to be in the records. And why, again, we're asking the questions? It's all about the evidence. So let's say my friend here is a Vietnam vet and tells me about this much information. I got basically who and where. I didn't get the what or why or any of those things. Now I have to go into the paperwork that he has and find out more. I need to find out who you served with. And then I need to get on Google and type in the unit and see if a unit record comes up. Because a lot of the units have historians, and they're putting great records on the internet. 25th Infantry out of Vietnam. God bless those people. Because I have found and gotten more people service connected because of their records that they have online than anywhere else. I'll give you a great story. Had a guy that was at where was he? Cu Chi. All he remembered was he was on the flight line for the helicopters, and they all wore red baseball hats. That's it. He was 100% PTSD, clearly. Had no recollection, couldn't give us any information. From that, because of the research we were able to do on the internet and talk to other people, we found not just the unit he was with, who wore the red baseball hats, but I found a unit map of the camp and was able to show where he was when Tet happened and they came out of the Cu Chi tunnels and were lobbing mortars in on him. We win. Because we did our homework. But we gathered the evidence. We gathered the evidence. We gathered the evidence. It wasn't just his story. If I wrote a claim that said, that please service connect this veteran for post-traumatic stress, he was on the flight line wearing a red baseball cap at Coochie, this date, VA would go, you got to give us a little more than that. Let me tell you something else that this law says. This law has a rule of equipoise. A rule of equipoise. What that means is if the evidence is equal, in balance, like one doctor says yes and one doctor says no, they always weight it toward the veteran. Now, I can't say routinely that, there's not some slip-ups, but when we go into the appeals process and get before judges and we argue the evidence of equipoise, every time I have never been disappointed that the VA has always ruled in favor of the veteran. Because it's the law. Not because they like veterans, it's the law. So when you're doing your work with disability compensation, find out what happened in service, find out if it's still bothering them today, make the connection between the two somehow, and fill in the gaps of evidence. Okay? Fill in the gaps with evidence. Because it doesn't matter what you think and what you feel or what story you tell. That's compensation. Okay? And you can be compensated when you look in this book, and I'm going to give you some documents. In Chapter 4 are all the rating codes for everything you can possibly have go wrong with you. Everything from musculoskeletal, heart conditions, gastric conditions, mental conditions, everything that can happen to you. Scarring from different things, whether it be fire or bullet wounds. You can have service connection for just a plethora of things. So Chapter 4 in there is all about, in the CFR, is all about what gets service connected and at what level. It's great. It's easy. There's another benefit for veterans. Pension. Who have heard of pension benefits? Pension? Okay. Anybody know what the rules are for pension? Okay. Okay, right. So we just got done talking about compensation. That if it happened in the military, that's compensable. That's you get something for that. Pension is like a benevolent program, because the VA decided that some veterans are going to be 100% disabled, but not due to their service, but they're still 100% disabled. And as a country, we're going to do something for them, even though it wasn't service related. But here was the rules. You had to serve at least 90 days of consecutive service. So you had to have at least 90 days in. 1 day of which had to be during a period of war. You didn't have to serve in the war. You could have served in Germany during Vietnam, got 90 days in. You served during a period of war, 1 day. And your income level as the veteran has to be below a certain amount. I think the amount right now is $925. And what the VA does is it says, we'll bring you up to $925 because wherever they get that number, they get it. So let's say you get Social Security, disability, you get $500 a month, and that's all you get. VA will give you the extra $425 if you're 100% non-service connected disabled. You serve 90 days, 1 day during a period of war. They'll bring you up. Now, this is important for our homeless veterans. I have brought many, many homeless veterans from the camps and the shelters into studio apartments and eating because they were 100% non-service connected disabled. They fit the box, and all of a sudden they're getting $925 a month. And that may not seem a lot to us, but for someone who's been homeless, who can get a studio apartment for $300 and have another $625 to spend a month, are you kidding me? Changes their life. Changes their life. Very important benefit, but it's a very narrow benefit because you have to be in pretty bad shape to earn it. So there's compensation and there's pension. Okay. Now I'm going to add a piece to the pension that you may have heard about. Have you heard about a benefit called aid and attendance? Everybody right now is trying to sell veterans on pension with aid and attendance. And who they're targeting are aging older veterans. And what they're saying to these aging older veterans is, look, you're in a retirement home or assisted living facility or a nursing home. You should be getting pension with aid and attendance because you're a veteran. A lot of Korea veterans and World War II veterans are being targeted. So what you first look at is did you serve in the right period? 90 days consecutive, 1 day during a period of war. And then they look at the assets, the income. Are you below the income threshold, right, for pension? There's for-profit companies out there now, this is a bad thing, that finds these veterans are above income. So they say, tell you what, we're going to get you this benefit, but you give us your assets and we'll put them in a trust for you. And they're hiding the assets. And then they're filing for pension. Big scam. But the aid and attendance piece is for veterans who are kind of in nursing home facilities, who can't take care of themselves. They need the aid and attendance of someone else to bathe, dress, hygiene, restroom, all that stuff. This is an extra financial benefit for those veterans. So sometimes when you talk about pension, you may hear them say, well, am I eligible for aid and attendance? If you're upright and talking to me, probably not. If you're in my office, no. You need to be fairly disabled where you need the aid and attendance for helping people, or having people help you use the restroom and that kind of stuff. Fairly significant. Bathing, those kind of things. There's another benefit with pension, though, called housebound. If you are someone who's maybe blind, and it's not because of service, but they're considered 100% disabled, you served during the right time, you're low income, you may get an extra amount of money because you're housebound. You can't get out. And you may need some more help. And so there's this housebound benefit. So when we talk about compensation, we talk about service connection, we talk about pension, it's not because of service. And there's a couple extra benefits that go around it that can bump it up above 925, which is good. Which is good, right? Any questions about compensation, something happened in service, having a problem now, connection, or pension, this idea of someone low income who's not service connected, but in bad shape?
No question now. Let's take our break and we'll come back.
Okay.
To
We were talking about the 5 ways to service connect earlier, and I couldn't remember the fifth one because I went to public school or something. It's aggravation. So remember, it's direct connection, secondary, presumptive, 1151, and aggravation. What aggravation means is, let's say you joined the service, but you played football in high school before you went to the service. And in football, you kind of had a knee injury. You twist your knee up or whatever the case might be. But the military still let you in, right? Under the rules of VA, there's this thing called the presumption of soundness. The presumption of soundness. And what that means is, if the military let you in, they presumed you were healthy when you got in there. Do you remember when you went to the MEP station and you had to drop to your knees and you had to do the push-ups and they checked all you? That little physical you got presumed you were healthy enough to be in the military. They checked you as a go. You went in. So now you're you got through basic training, you're through AIT, you get your first duty station, and your knee, the bad football knee, goes out. And you go to the sick call, and they look at it, and they say, oh, that's that bad football knee. But yeah, it's aggravated from what you're doing, whatever that might be. You're an infantryman. You get out of the military, and you go to the VA, and they say, well, that's your old football injury. And you say, yes, but it was aggravated by my military service. So what the VA has to do is determine what percentage of the injury was because of the football, and what percentage of the injury was because of the military for the aggravation. So again, 5 ways to service connect. Direct, got hurt, service connect. Presumptive, Agent Orange, Atomic Veterans, whatever it might be. Secondary, you have something wrong with you and something else goes wrong with you. That's related to the first thing that's wrong with you. And then you have the 1151, which is that malpractice claim or the voc rehab claims, and then this aggravation piece. So that gets us square on that. Let's talk a little bit. We've talked a little bit about the veteran benefit, compensation, pension. Those are the 2 big benefits. But there are other benefits that have to do with family members. Now, here in Oregon, we have about 22 to 25,000 World War II veterans with us still, and about 30,000 Korea War veterans with us still. Okay, but the Korea War guys are 75, pushing 80, and the World War II guys are 83s, 85s, 90s. Okay, 95s. They're getting there. They're getting there. As they pass away, they obviously have burial benefits, right? But there are widow benefits. And this is really important to understand is, and probably I think the hardest part of my job is a widow benefit. So a veteran passes and there's a surviving spouse. And the spouse will come and say, my husband was a veteran. Do I have any benefits? And I have to tell you the honest truth, maybe, maybe not. It all depends on the service of the veteran. Obviously, there's the free burial at Willamette for the veteran, the headstone. There may be some money involved if that veteran was getting veteran benefits before he passed. But for the widow, there are two benefits, and it's the exact same mirror image of what the veteran gets. We talked about compensation and pension for the veteran. There's a compensation and a pension for widows. The compensation for widows has a different name, though. They call it Dependency Indemnity Compensation, or DIC for short. Everyone knows what DIC is. DIC for a widow happens one of a couple ways. If the veteran died due to a service-connected condition, either directly or in part, the widow will receive dependence indemnity compensation, will receive DIC. So, for instance, you're a World War II veteran, and you're a POW. And one of the presumptives of being a POW is some heart issues. 65 years later, the guy has a heart attack and dies, and he's service-connected for his heart because of his POD presumptive. Because he died due to that heart condition, the widow's going to get DIC. And that is about $1,200 a month, tax-free for the rest of her life. Okay? There's only one caveat. If you're younger widow and you remarry before the age of 57, I believe, then the DIC goes away because you have another husband to take care of you. But if you remarry after that 57, you keep your DIC. But it doesn't have to be direct. Let's say I have, just trying to think of a good disease. Let's say I have diabetes, type 2 diabetes. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I die of a number of causes. Okay, my heart gives out, my kidneys give out, I have all sorts of problems. And on the death certificate they put, the main factor was asphyxiation. You suffocated. And they said contributing factors were diabetes, heart condition, all these other things. Because it was a contributing factor, the wife, the surviving spouse, will get DIC because it was a contributing factor. The key to this, my friends, is the death certificate. If the death certificate, either as the main cause or the contributory cause of death, does not list the service-connected condition, the VA will have a hard time connecting the dots. While we were in a break, we were talking about how quickly claims can go. And I want to address that real fast. If you do a claim correctly, and you give VA everything they need, and you meet all the legal requirements, your claim can go very quickly, because there's not a lot of questions that they're going to have to answer, because you've given them all the evidence already. So in a claim that a gentleman here was talking about, he said he filed in May or something like this, in June, July it was done. It was like, bing. Well, that's because all the evidence was there. Some of our widows' claims go very quickly. The veteran has a death certificate that on it clearly states that his service-connected condition was a direct or contributory cause. Done. They go very quickly. That's the first way you get DIC as a widow. The second way, however, is if the veteran were 100% service-connected disabled, and this includes IU, and they've been that way for 10 years or more, and they die after that 10-year period, the widow is entitled to DIC. And the reason they say that is had been such a long time since the person had been able to work or had been that disabled that that income that person was getting was lost through the death, and the wife will get that
At
now.
that point, does it still have to be service connected? Yeah.
No, does not have to be a service-connected death, just 10 years past the point. So I'm 100% service-connected disabled. I live 15 years after my rating and I get hit by a bus. My wife's entitled to DIC because the 10-year mark was met. So two ways, either the direct or contributory cause of death was the service connection, or 10 years at 100%, 10 or more years at 100% service connected. Now, what's interesting is this is where a lot of medical research comes in. We end up in our office doing a lot of research on a death to prove that what was a direct or contributing cause of death was indeed related to a service-connected condition. And I'll give you a classic example. Before the VA decided that ischemic heart disease, heart issues, were related to Agent Orange, we were saying heart condition issues were related to PTSD because of the stress. So a veteran dies of a heart issue who was service-connected for PTSD, we would go back and file a DIC claim for the widow, claiming that the death was in part due to the stress of the post-traumatic stress, putting stress on the person's heart, and we would get medical opinions saying that. We would find medical journals that would say that, and we would try to push through that piece. And so you do this medical research. So for this DIC, it's the better benefit. Just like compensation for a veteran is better than pension, because pension is a low-income program, and this is about your injuries. DIC for the widow, the compensation for the widow is a better benefit. She gets $1,200 a month or whatever it is, the rest of her life, not complicated, other than just the death was caused some way by the service connection and or that 10-year 100% issue.
Is that taxable?
Not taxable. Not taxable. Most VA benefits, actually all VA benefits, are not taxable.
Now they also got on there the $1,200 for the DIC for a widow that, for the veterans, 100% plus. And there's something in the Gray Book that there's an additional $200 and some a month. They meet a certain criteria or something.
Well, there's dependence additions. So we have unfortunately we have widows of Iraq and Afghanistan, and these young ladies, 23, 24 years old with a baby, you get an extra addition for the child. And the other thing that they get for these younger widows, which is really great, VA will pay for the schooling for the dependents of someone receiving DIC. So let's say you have an Iraq casualty and you have the widow and she's getting DIC, but they also get this dependence education for both the widow and the child. So if she needs to go back to school to learn a trade so she can go to work, and when the child grows up and needs to go to college, the money's there for them to do that, which is really important. In terms of the extra money for DIC, I'm not tracking with you, so if you find it, Victor, let me know. The second benefit is pension, widow's pension. Now we have the live veterans pension, right? Low income, 100%, non-service connected, right? There's a widow's pension. That's a low income pension. I have to tell you, I don't like this benefit because you have to make less than, I think, $625 a month. Remember the veteran pension, you had to make less than $925, $625, and they bring you to that level as a widow if you qualify. And here's how you qualify. Veteran had to serve 90 consecutive days, one day of which was during a period of war. That, remember on the other one you had to be 100% non-service connected disabled? That no longer applies. So for the widow, the husband didn't have to be disabled. They just had to serve 90 consecutive days, one day during a period of war, and their income is below the income threshold. Now what I didn't tell you is you get to take away your medical expenses. So let's say I'm a widow and I make $1,500 a month off of my Social Security, yet my medical expenses are $3,000 a month because I'm in a assisted living facility, and my kids are paying the back end of it. What's my income? Negative whatever, right? I would qualify for widow pension because I get to remove my medical expenses. So one of the questions we ask with widows, remember this is about the interviewing, right? Can I see the death certificate? Was your husband receiving veteran benefits at the time of his death? Was he? Oh, he's service connected. And then you try to connect that death certificate, cause of death, to that service connection somehow. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not so obvious, but you got to connect it. Then if they don't get that piece, if that piece just doesn't work for them, or you're just not able to connect on DIC, you ask a lot of questions about the widow. Tell me a little bit about your income. Are you getting his Social Security? You know, when a couple die, when one of the couple persons in a couple dies, the remaining spouse gets the higher Social Security. So you got to ask them what kind of Social Security you're getting, if any. What kind of income do you have, if any, retirements, those type of things. But what are your medical expenses? See, most of the time you wouldn't think to ask that question. Because if you say, what are your medical expenses? And we say, oh my gosh, you're paying $3,000 a month for your retirement, for your assisted living. That brings down the income. And that might qualify him then for widow's pension. And remember those aid and attendance and housebound, the extras, if you can't take care of yourself, those are thrown in too. Those apply for widow's pension as well as regular pension. So what's confusing about veteran benefits, just these 4 benefits, there's 2 for the veteran, and there's 2 for the spouse. There's a compensation for the veteran, and there's a compensation for the survivor. There's a pension for the veteran, and there's a pension for the survivor. I will be honest, it took me months and months and months to get my head wrapped around that when I first started this business, because I couldn't figure out the pension parts. In the old days when I started some years ago, there were actually 3 different types of pension people could be on. Now it's pretty much the one kind of pension everyone's on for the survivors. So,
But it has to do with your other sources of income.
but it all has to do with the other sources of income for pension. It's all low income. So when you think of pension, don't think about it like a retirement. A lot of veterans will come to you and say, do I get a pension for my military service? And what they're really asking is, do I have some kind of retirement? It's a semantic question, because on our language, pension means you're low income and you need some help, not that you get a retirement. And so sometimes we're correcting people saying, well, pension's something different. You may have heard about it, but it's not pension in the sense that you serve and there's some kind of pension. Pension means you're low income and the VA is going to try to help you out.
I've got here too, $980 max of 2 years.
Okay.
Would be, if you're over that, you don't get.
Right. But again, if you had medical expenses,
Dollar for dollar.
actually it's a weird formula. It's not dollar for dollar. It's a 5%. First you take off 5% of the medical expenses, and then whatever you're left with is a dollar for dollar. So it's a weird formula, and we do that for you, and the Pension Maintenance Center for the VA helps figure out those formulas for you. What we want you to do, from my perspective, is when you find these veterans that have these issues and they come to you and they're concerned about compensation or pension or widow that they come to you with or whatever, you don't have to be the end-all, know-it-all of all these things. Oh, yeah. You don't have to be the end-all, know-it-all, all these things. You just have to know enough to say, that's something that we've been talking about, and I need to get them to a service officer so we can walk through this together to find out if there's something. What Victor just handed me, it says $233 is added to your DIC if the veteran was totally disabled 8 consecutive years prior to the death. And 8 consecutive years prior to the death. So this is what happens. That's one of the trick questions we put on our test, as a matter of fact. If you got that DIC because you lasted 10 years at 100%, and then you die at the 11th year, and your spouse then goes and says, I want a DIC claim, they get the extra $233 a month on top of the $1,200 or whatever it is. It looks like $1,154 according to this book. $1,154 plus $233. Just got to pay a raise, right? Questions. This is complicated. I know that you're drinking from the fire hose right now, and it's okay, because there's no way you're going to learn this book in one sitting in a couple hours. What I want to do is give you a flavor, though, of what you're looking for. Because, again, what you guys really are, you're interviewers. Okay? What you're doing out there is meeting people and asking them the right questions. And the right questions has to do with where did you serve, what did you do, what happened to you. I'm terribly sorry for your loss. Was the death in any way connected with anything he was getting from the VA? Now, let me tell you something else that is very, it's not very well known. Some of our people miss this. You don't have to be service connected to have the death be related to your service. Okay? We have veterans who die, and I'll look at the death certificate and I'll see something that could be related to service somehow. Okay? Ischemic heart disease, diabetes type 2, all the conditions we're talking about today. And when I see that, I go, what's my next question? And I know he's a veteran. Do you ever have problems with X, Y, and Z? Because you can file a claim for a death benefit post-death and say this veteran had post-traumatic stress for which he never filed a claim. The death was related to his service-connected post-traumatic stress. She should get DIC. So you prove he had post-traumatic stress, you prove the DIC case. And you can do that all post-mortem.
And under the presumptive, isn't it under the presumptive if a Vietnam veteran, for example, Agent Orange, dies of ischemic heart disease and never received a benefit, the widow can go back and file for a claim.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the widow can go do that DIC claim. So what we do...
But is this at a minimum level of compensation?
Nope.
Again, based upon
Just
upon income?
if you're 0%, let me give you an example. 0% service connected for hearing loss. Okay? You can't hear. And you're walking on the train tracks and don't hear the train. Train gets you. I'm going to make an argument that you died because you had 0% hearing loss and you didn't hear the train. And that contributed to your death. So 0% to 100% doesn't matter. Percentage doesn't matter. It matters that something service connected. Gotcha. Now, this is why 0 matters. VA is the only system in the world where a 0% matters. People get mad. What do you mean 0%? You're service connected. That's all that matters. So if you get diverticulitis, which is that intestine issue where your intestines kind of cut open and you can't eat seeds and things. Okay, good. If you're 0% for diverticulitis because you've never had a surgery and you've never had a bowel resection, and you're 0%, yet the cause of death was a bowel rupture that I can say was in part or completely due to your 0% service connection, you're in. DIC for the widow. So, again, it's not about the percentage. It's about service connection. And so we do go back if we see something on a death certificate and say, you know what, that should have been service connected, and it wasn't. So let's go prove that this should have been service connected. We do all that work. And how you do it is you recreate the medical files and you show buddy statements or whatever the case might be. For some, it's easy because like they'll have a Purple Heart or a combat action badge on their DD-214 to show that they had combat. So it's kind of presumed that they had distress, the stressor was there. You do all that work only to say, and what's on this death certificate is connected to what he should have been service connected for, and the widow now gets the DIC. Okay? So that's a lot of work. But it all starts with you guys asking the right questions. Right?
That occurs irrespective of what her income level is?
The DIC recurs regardless of whatever.
Okay, that's all.
So I'll give you an example. For somebody who's killed in action in Iraq, Afghanistan, they automatically get the DIC. That's an automatic veteran benefit. So the widow will get the $400,000 of the soldier's guaranteed life insurance. So they'll have $400,000 there. And they'll get their DIC, their monthly 1143 plus whatever benefit on top of that, the DEA and all these other benefits on top of it. And it's all income neutral. Pension is the only thing that is income dependent. Pension is the only thing income dependent. And if there was anything I could leave you with, it would be that. Compensation, not income dependent, related to service. Pension, income dependent, not related to service. Those two things are just how you juggle those two things. Okay? Questions about those two things?
The children and our women veterans from Vietnam, that's been an issue that they're going to start running across. I run across with disabilities.
Yeah. So, yep. Let me talk a little bit about post-traumatic stress for a second. We haven't talked about health care very much, and I want to talk about health care right now. VA, as you know, has a health care system. When veterans Vietnam era back signed up, everyone was told they were going to have VA health care for life. That was part of the deal. They changed that somewhere in the mid-'80s, early '90s because it was too expensive. So everybody that was getting all their health care were grandfathered in, but veterans from those eras that didn't get into the health care system until after the change were not given free health care. What they did was they created a category system, 1 through 8, and based upon your service connection, your POW status, your Purple Heart status, various income levels, you got put in a certain category, and that depended on what kind of health care you got.
That's if you're getting that throughout the years.
Yeah, so
You're still connected.
yeah, you're still connected with the meds. So you're going to have a lot of people asking questions about VA healthcare. We want to sign everybody up we possibly can for VA healthcare because it's an earned benefit. You don't know whether they're going to fall into which category, though. I have a lot of people that are over income and don't fall into the other categories, and they say, no, you're over income for VA healthcare. That's okay because I'm going to get them service connected, and all service connected issues qualify for VA healthcare. So we do it one of two ways, either through the service connection or through just the service itself. However, VA does not take care of families. VA healthcare does not take care of widow or of spouses and children.
Unless you're me.
Well, there's one way that happens. If you're 100% service connected or 100% IU, and you're permanent and total, not just because you're 100%, but if you're permanent and total, or you're getting DIC, you're going to get an extra benefit that's called, it used to be called Champus, but it's Champ VA now. And what that is, it's like an insurance program. So let's say that, like in my case, I have it for my spouse. My wife she works at OHSU, so she has insurance there. But let's say she gets cancer, and they only pay 80%. Well, this other thing I have because of my VA disability will pay the other 20% for her. It's a secondary kind of insurance. You have no insurance, it's your primary insurance. VA will deal with that. It's called Champ VA, but you have to be permanent total to get that. Okay, permanent total.
I was just giving you back. The VA did take my wife in Portland and do open heart surgery and released her, and they paid the bill.
Did they? You're a lucky man. So
They're just afraid of Victor.
yeah, they're just afraid of Victor. They know him. Actually, when I say they routinely don't pay for spouses, there are some things that they will do for spouses, and I'm thinking about the vet center in particular. If you know about post-traumatic stress, what you may not know is there's something called secondary post-traumatic stress, and when somebody is in a home with a spouse and their PTSD is raging, it can cause a secondary post-traumatic stress reaction by the spouse or the children. Or you have deployments where the children are having nightmares about dad or mom being gone. The vet centers will see these family members and do the counseling for them. And so will the VA, the clinics and the hospital. There's a certain amount of health care they can get through there. But I have to be honest with you that for spouses and dependents and children, there's not a lot through the VA system you're going to get. So what do we do as advocates? We network within our community with community mental health, with other physicians, with whatever other groups are out there that will provide service to these veterans. Now, luckily, because of the reintegration team that we have in Salem that we all work together, we know a lot of the resources in your communities where if there's a spouse or a child or even a widow or something that can't get what they need, we'll find a way for them to get what they need because there are providers out there doing this for veterans and their families. And but there's this assumption, and it primarily is widows. This will be the saddest thing that'll ever happen to you. A widow will come to you and say, my husband was a veteran and he told me the VA would take care of me. And you have to be the bearer of bad news while this person is grieving that wasn't accurate. I have widows come to my office and say, my husband signed up for a survivor benefit plan, which is an insurance you can get when you retire from the military. If you sign up for it, it's a paid insurance. They never signed up for it. And you have to tell them your husband didn't sign up for it, you didn't pay the premiums, you don't have survivor benefit plan. And it's heartbreaking because you have these people at their most vulnerable time and you're giving them the worst news because everything that they had been counting on through the illness of their husband or spouse isn't accurate. And you have to be the one that has to tell them that's just not accurate. And that's hard. But that shouldn't be the end of your day. You still need to interview them to find out what their needs are. Housing needs, food needs, electricity needs. Do they have family? Do they have support? Do they need support? Because there are all sorts of community resources out there, state resources and community resources, that we can wrap our arms around those people with those resources instead of VA resources. So I keep on coming back to the same theme, don't I? It's all about the questions you ask. What I do to train my VSOs, first we have them read this book. They have to read the thousands of pages in this book, and we test them along the way. But then we train them about how to ask questions, how to do an interview, how to sit down and ask a veteran or a spouse or a dependent or a widow the question that's going to get you the answers you need. So as we've talked a little bit about filing claims for compensation and pension, we've talked a little about filing a VA healthcare form, the 1010EZ. You've heard about it, the 1010EZ. And we know that there's all these categories. I've got to ask a lot of questions, don't I? One of the first questions we ask is what? Do you have a DD-214? Do you have a DD-214? If not, what do you do about it? Do you know what you do about it?
Form.
Form 180 in order.
Form 180 and order it. Outstanding. I would tell you this, if you're going to order the DD-214, order everything. Get it all at once. If they tell you the records are burned, don't believe them. It does mean the record's burned, but it didn't mean that they didn't take photocopies of the burned pages. So a friend of mine, actually a career era vet, came to our office and they said, your record's burned. And then they sent him a letter saying, you're dead. Could you please prove you're alive? Okay, so we proved he was alive. And then they sent him a package. And in the package were all the photocopies of his burned records, which they said didn't exist. And then they had them. So we never really say die on this thing until they absolutely tell us, no, there is nothing. Because there are a bunch of those records that actually did completely burn up. But we were lucky with this fella. It's a hearing loss claim. And he was a combat engineer. Construction combat engineer, blowing things up. Singed page. And right here it says combat engineer. And that's the only word I needed to win his claim. And on that one piece of burned paper, even though you can't tell what was before it or after it, it had the words, 2 words I needed to prove his claim. And he'll win his claim because of that burned, singed piece of paper. So never say give up on those documents until you're absolutely sure they don't exist. So you ask them, DD-214, take a look at it, get that information off it. Where'd you serve? What'd you do? Ever go to sick call? You have anything bother you? Musculoskeletal, any kind of gastric issues, any kind of soft tissue issues, any kind of cancers, any kind of emotional issues. If they served in combat, where'd you serve? What'd you do? What unit were you with? I'm not going to ask you to tell your war story, but I'm going to look it up when you leave. Right? Because if you tell me what unit you were in, the years you were there, and what you were doing, where you were, I can find it, can't I? I'm going to look it up. Because that's going to be part of the evidence I submit. It's all about the evidence, all about the evidence. Every question you ask is about gathering evidence. Gathering evidence. So, when we're talking about whether it's education benefits for the new GI Bill for the young people coming back, you would think that's just an automatic benefit, right? No, they got to sign and get a certificate of eligibility. They got to go online and say, this is when I served, there's proof of when I served, and this is why I'm eligible. Evidence. Healthcare. You got to meet their criteria through the evidence. You got to turn in a DD-214 to prove you served honorably. Do you all deal with incarcerated vets at all? You know, veterans that come out of the can, they have special problems getting their veteran benefits turned back on, because if you go into jail for more than 61 days, your veteran benefits get turned off. And what we do with those benefits most of the time is we move them to the family. It's called apportionment. We can move some of those benefits to the family. But when the veteran gets out of jail and goes into re-entry, when we try to rehabilitate them and get them back in society, we can turn their veteran benefits back on. Their compensation, or their pension, or their health care, we get them on the straight and narrow. You know the number one reason for recidivism? Don't have a job. Don't have any money. So I guess I'll go knock over a liquor store. At least they'll put me back in the can, I'll get fed. It's a hard thing. You get somebody some money flowing through a compensation or a pension, they exponentially improve their chances of not going back to jail. Because they can buy... You ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy, the things you need in life, housing, shelter, food, all that stuff? They can buy those things, even with that small 925 or whatever it is, and be taken care of. I mean, remember, I don't want you to lose sight of this. We're talking about a lot of legal things and evidence and interviewing. What are we here to do? Change lives. Change lives. If you walk into this and you become a bureaucrat, and this is what I fight and this is what I tell all my people about, the day that you're here just pushing paper and doing legal stuff, leave. This job's not for you anymore. The day you lose your passion about caring for people and trying to change lives for these veterans, stop. Let someone else take your place. You've done enough. Is it frustrating? Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes it's frustrating because the evidence doesn't exist. It's not frustrating because what the veteran is saying is wrong. What the veteran is saying is absolutely right, and we believe him 100%. The problem is I can't prove it. I'll tell you a terrible story I had. Veteran in Vietnam was at NKP Air Base in Thailand. He was sent into Vietnam multiple times. He was part of this Alpha 5 team that was dropping sonar buoys into the jungle so they could hear when the Kong were going through and doing supply routes on the Hanoi Trail. Very top secret stuff. Not one record of this guy ever being in Vietnam. He's got lung cancer that's metastasized to his brain. He's going to die. Okay? I do everything you possibly can do. I try to get CIA records. I talked to his commanding general because I called him and he would say, no, we sent no one into Vietnam, so it's still secret. Could not prove it. Man dies. Widow got nothing. Could not prove any Agent Orange exposure because we could not prove he was in Vietnam. Months and months and months and months go by, and this woman was very mad at us. Some people wait for the VA to validate their story. And I tell people, don't live like that. It's not up to VA to validate your story. We believe you. And I absolutely believe what that man said. I just couldn't prove it. VA changed its rules and said if you were at NKP, you were exposed to Agent Orange because they were spraying that on the runways and on the foliage around the gates and around the fences. And it turns out you were exposed. So we filed a widow's claim for her based upon the man's death for the metastasized brain cancer and lung cancer, which was service-connected, presumptive of Agent Orange exposure. And we're going to win that one. But the reason she was furious with us because she didn't think we believed her. And you're going to find veterans that are furious because they think you don't believe them. And you got to tell them, it's not that I don't believe you. I absolutely believe you. But there's a difference between what I believe and what I can prove. Someone was telling me about ship's logs. And they got their ship's logs, and the ship's logs had no evidence at all about anything he said. And my comment was, must have been some really interesting cargo you had. You know, you're all in the military. Were all the records right? Was the E2 that was doing the records always getting them right? No, of course not. So you can have clerking errors. You can have classified situations where the documents aren't going to say the same thing you are. There's going to be these things where the evidence doesn't line up. And what you got to tell your veterans is it's not that we don't believe you. We just have to figure out how to make the evidence line up. Now, one of the ways we do that when there's no evidence, because I want to get into what happens when the easy stuff doesn't work. Buddy statements.
Take that break. And then
Take the break. We'll talk about buddy statements.
It's all yours.
Okay, so we're going to talk about what happens if you don't have the evidence. You've done your interviews. You find out where they were, what they did. You find out if they ever got looked at. I'll give you a great example. I had a veteran from World War II, one of the Band of Brothers, if you watched that show. He was in Karatan, and he was doing an ammo run. And there was a mortar attack in a field, that he was open in a field, and he hit the ground and just laid there and waited for the attack, and he got hit in the hand by a piece of shrapnel. Gets to the place to get the ammo, goes to the aid station, they patch him up. They said, do you want us to write this up? He said, you know, people missing arms and legs. No, scratch. Brings the ammo back and never worries about it again. Later in life, some people want to get him a Purple Heart for that. What do you think the Army said? No proof. We got a buddy statement from his lieutenant saying it happened. Still didn't give it to him. Still didn't give it to him. Too much time had passed. The evidence just wasn't strong enough for them to say yes. Because again, it wasn't that no one thought that he was lying or didn't believe him. Just the evidence wasn't strong enough. So when you get to a place where you've done the interviews and you're doing things, you may find that it's not nice and clean. That you're not able just to give me the medical records from your service that said you had malaria. You may not just be able to do that. So then what do you do? Well, one of the things we talk about is buddy statements. I will tell you, veterans hate it when you tell them that. Because they say, it's been 40 years, I haven't seen those guys. Yeah, we get that. But is there anything or anybody that can confirm what you're saying and give us a little evidence? Let me give you some ideas of how some of this works. Sometimes it's easy. Oh, I'm still in contact with those guys, or I'm still in contact with the unit, or there's a unit historian, or whatever it might be. Yeah, I can get those records, or I can get someone to write a statement. We were all there. That's easy. Sometimes it's not so easy because that infrastructure doesn't exist. So some of the things that we've done in the past, were using the internet, you got to find out what unit the person was with. That is one of the key questions. If you're having trouble with evidence, where were you attached, and where were you, especially in Vietnam? There's a book out there called Where We Were in Vietnam. And it's a big giant book, and it has every unit, every year, where everybody was, so you can track everybody. So if I find the unit you were in, and I know the years you were in it, and kind of where you were supposed to be, then I can start going and getting morning reports, and I can start going and getting disciplinary logs, and I can start finding unit histories and after action reports and all those kind of things.
Does it have names in there?
What's that?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Does it have names in there?
It doesn't have to have your name in here, and this is the beauty of it. If you were with Delta 526 in World War II with the 26th Infantry, and you were at the Meuse River, and there's an after-action report saying there was a firefight as you were crossing the Meuse River. They were throwing mortars at you. They blew up the bridge. You guys swam across, got to the other side, and took prisoners. Well, I got a document that says you were in that unit. So guess what? You did that. There was a court case called Pentecost, and Pentecost said if you were in the area and in the unit where all that stuff happened, it's presumed it happened to you directly. Okay? So we go get all those documents. We've had people, I had a Navy case that was really difficult. This fellow's job was, part of his job at one point, they had some KIAs and they had to pull him out of the ocean. And he was part of that crew, part of that team that did that. And there was zero documentation we could find, and we had to order all of the ship's logs. And his memory, this was 40 years later, he couldn't remember the months or he knew the year, so we had to order a year of ship logs to look through them all to find that incident where they noted that yes, they were pulling KIAs out of this. And so the connection was made that yes, the story he's telling, he was on that ship. We argued Pentecost, he was there, happened to him, service connection. You have to be very thoughtful. I was telling the group during a break, I had one where I had to actually try to go find the Pan Am Airlines and American Airlines manifests to see who flew on the planes to prove someone flew into Saigon. Some of that stuff still exists. It's all archived. But you got to go find it. Now, is that your guys' job? Not necessarily. Certainly my job. Certainly my team's job. But if you're asking these questions and you got a real head scratcher, God, I just don't know how we're going to prove this. Come to us. Bring them to us. And we'll all put our heads together and say, you know, we think there might be a way to do this. I had a veteran who for 40 years tried to prove his post-traumatic stress claim. Could not prove it. I got a hold of it, and I started doing some internet research, and I got his unit name. And I found a unit picture in the jungle with about 20 guys. And they're standing next to their, makeshift LA 7,000 miles this way post, And I showed it to him. I said, which one are you? And he goes, I'm right there. I said, yeah. Gave it to the VA, says, this is him in his unit from this website. Good luck. They immediately turned it on Service Connection. Because again, the VA wants to win these claims for these veterans. They want to service connect them. But they must abide by the law. So, we're talking about compensation, service connection, military related. We're talking about pension, low income, not service connected. But really what we're talking about is evidence. We have to prove to the VA that what we're saying is backed up in a legal, evidentiary way. That's what we're doing in all that we do. So you guys are the front lines. I mean, you meet somebody at Fred Meyer, and hey, I see you're wearing an Army hat. You look like a grizzled Vietnam vet. I served too. I was in Da Nang. Where were you? And you get talking, and you say, you got your veteran benefits? Oh, crap. When I got back, they tell you the story. You said, no, it's different now. It really is. Well, they couldn't find my records anyway. They said they burned. Take care of that. There are new ways to do it. Your job is to convince them that give it another shot. Give it another shot. Because our ability to research with the internet tools we have nowadays, our ability to find those records that used to be spread over all of God's creation are now centralized. Our ability to request records, our ability to work with the VA, our ability to appeal up to a judge so we can make an in-person argument is significantly and exponentially better than it was in 1975, 1980, 1985. I came into the VA system in 1988. And I remember how bad it was in 88 compared to what it is now. It's rocket science now compared to that. And it's just going to get better because VA really wants to do a great job for our veterans. And so as you're meeting these folks, and you're thinking, okay, what if I run into a veteran at this place? What are my questions I'm going to ask? Who, what, where, why, and when? Who, what, where, why, and when? Where'd you serve? When did you serve? Why'd you serve? You ever get hurt? Sick call? Those things? That will give you a lot of information. Says Vietnam, all those presumptives. It says atomic veteran. I was one of those guys that got screwed at Bikini Island. Blah, 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 blah. I've never been able to get my veteran benefits. Oh, we got to prove your case. You guys, we're like quasi-attorneys. What we do is build a legal argument. I pound that into my veteran service officers and my county veteran service officers. Our job is not to write a story. It's to write a legal argument. And if we do our job right and we provide enough evidence to VA, they will turn that claim around quickly. If someone tells you, well, I've been fighting my claim for 20 years, you know what that means? For 20 years, they've not been able to provide the evidence VA needs to win. I take that as a challenge. I love it when a vet comes to my office and says, I've been fighting this for 20 years. I'm never going to win this thing. Whoa, 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 whoa. What have you done so far? Let's take a look at your claims file and see what you've done. Hey, did you read this letter where they said if you just give me this piece of evidence, you'll win? Well, I can't get that piece of evidence. Well, let's see what we can do about getting that piece of evidence. Did you know in every VA letter they send you on a rating decision, they tell you why they deny you and what you have to do to win? That's when we say, that's exact evidence we got to go find. Is it easy? No. It takes time. And this is the hard part for the veterans. When you're talking to your colleagues, patience. Be patient. Everyone's working hard for you. The VA takes a long time. There's 250,000 employees at the VA. It's a big machine. It's aside from the Defense Department, it's the biggest bureaucracy in Washington. Okay? It takes time to run through this. But you will get your day in court, and you will have an opportunity to win that claim. And even though it doesn't seem like it, this is not an adversarial system. The VA wants you to get everything you earned. They absolutely want you to win your claim if you can evidentially prove it happened. That's our job.
Tom, we want to thank you for coming out here.
Always a pleasure.
Speaking to Vets Helping Vets, we ask that these guys be able to get a hold of you, and they want to work very closely with you.
Yeah, great.
We do appreciate what you do and how much you get out here and support every veteran out there.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Tom, your position is over the average.